It's Monday, which is the best day of the week for day drinking and self-pity. So, let's do that, shall we? Cheers. Welcome back, everybody, to me doing the weekly navel-gazing. And yes, we're back to the weekly schedule because I'm not gallivanting around the world all the time, which is, nice, I guess. Anyway, let's get started with the usual thing where I talk about the books that I read last week, and then I talk about the books I plan to read this week, and then we talk about all the videos I didn't make, and maybe the videos I made, and then look at plans for this week, and then it descends into rambling, asking questions, and all the other stuff that I do to fill these videos with, well, nothing basically, to, rack up those view numbers, which is obviously what YouTubers do. So stay tuned. There will be some interesting discussion later, I promise. So let's get started and talk about books that I read last week, because I did read books, which I think is, the whole purpose of this. I have passed the 90% mark on my Goodreads reading goal, which I optimistically set at 150 books earlier this year, because I just wanted Goodreads to leave me alone. And I've passed that. I am somewhere above that now, and that is certainly something, I don't know, I'm not proud of it. It just shows you how much time I spend at home and not doing anything productive, I guess. So I did read a lot of books last week. Most of those were like rereads because I wanted to, get stuff in my head straight for the big video project. So that's most of what I did. What books did I actually read, though? Well, I did read, and this was the first time read, Brigham Young, Frontier Prophet, by John G. Turner, I think. It's a pretty long biography of Brigham Young, which I think is always worth reading. I mean, I'm collecting Mormon church president, LDS church president biographies at this point. It's a bit like Pokemon, I guess. Gotta catch them all. I have read a biography of Ezra Taft Benson. I've read one of David O. McKay. I've read one of Brigham Young now. And I am currently reading, which I started a couple of days ago, currently reading Rough Stone Rolling by Richard Lyman Bushman, which is currently, I guess, one of the more definitive biographies of Joseph Smith Jr., which is the Joseph Smith. There's one thing that I've noticed when you do Mormon history. Mormon history is a bit like reading 100 Years of Solitude, because there's at least as many Joseph Smiths in there as there are Jose Arcadio Buendias in 100 Years of Solitude. It feels very similar in that regard, which just shows you that, Garcia Marquez knew how to, talk about families in small towns, I guess. So that's just like something. So there is another biography about Joseph F. Smith, who was the church leader, LDS church leader from, I guess, 1900-something until 1918. So he's the leader, church leader during World War I and stuff like that. He's, in that regard, obviously also relevant, because it's, I guess, one of these more formative parts of church history. From what I can tell, I feel like the 1920s to 1930s, while being absolutely tumultuous, are the actual church leaders, prophets, are not as important there. I feel it's more like people in like the second rank, like somewhere in the presidency and below. People like J. Reuben Clark are the more important characters to have in mind there. But maybe I'll read the Joseph F. Smith biography if I feel like spending another Audible credit on it and having the time, because at some point I need to end this. Anyway, what else did I read? I did read A House Full of Females, Plural Marriage and Women's Rights in Early Mormonism from 1835 to 1870, and that is by, Laurel Thatcher Ulrich, and that was a really, really good book. I really enjoyed that. It's mostly it's based on diaries and letters written by mostly women that were part of Mormonism at the time. There's also a lot of diary entries from Wilford Woodruff, who was another church president before Joseph F. Smith, who was the one who actually wrote that commandment that explained that polygamy or plural marriage was no longer done by the church in 1890, I think 1890, maybe 1895. You see, I'm getting lost in the whole Mormonism thing at this point. So, and he was a vigorous diarist, and a lot of his diary and letters between him and his wife Phoebe are core of that story. But you have a lot of other diaries, letters, and so forth, and it's an interesting text in that regard, because you get like a very on the ground regular people talking about all their troubles with being part of a new church, but also trying to live life in the 1830s and 1840s and then 1850s and so forth, which are not necessarily the easiest time to live in the North American West. The trek to Utah, for example, being very much like a Malazan story, with lots of children dying of very interesting diseases. So it's dark in that regard, but it's just like very interesting to have those like first like direct sources and testimonies of people, and that's just like, if you're interested in like stuff like microhistory, that's just a really cool book just for that. Speaking of microhistory, I did reread Kingdom of Nauvoo by Benjamin Park, which focuses just on the settlement of Nauvoo in from 1940 to 1945. Early 46, roughly, the settlement of Nauvoo in that regard. It's very much microhistory based on all the different documents we have from the time diaries, the stuff that notes that Joseph Smith's secretary wrote down, and it is an interesting document for just like a western town in Illinois at that point. Nauvoo, Illinois being for like a short time, a huge city compared to other. It was like larger than Chicago for a while. It's what I'm saying. It's very much an interesting sort of like snapshot of some bit of history, and I like those kind of books because they are useful even beyond just me doing Mormonism research at the moment, because they also are if you play role-playing games like Dogs in the Vineyard or Deadlands or whatever, if you plan on writing any form of historical novel, those give you a lot of like bits and pieces and insights into general like frontier life in the 1840s and 1850s in America, and I think that's just history is interesting in that regard. So that's something that I reread. What else did I reread or read last week? Well, I did finally read the really good and wonderful The Great Win by Alan Moore, which came out at the beginning of the month, beginning of October, but it took me like a couple of weeks to getting it, and then finally reading it yesterday. I read the whole thing. I enjoyed it. So that's mostly what I read last week. I may have forgotten something, but brain being brain, I don't know. Lots of Mormonism, and it's kind of all flowing into each other at this point, because some I've read before, some I'm rereading, kind of does turn everything into this big sort of like Mormonism cloud, which brings me to the question, like, what am I going to read this week? The answer is, of course, more Mormonism, I guess, which means I'm going to finish Rough Stone Rolling. It's quite the big book. The audiobook has over 28 hours. The book has 780 pages, I think. So yeah, it's quite the big thing, and I'm through it, like 1/3 through the book so far. So I have some more reading to do in that one. After that, it's a good question what I'll read after that. Like, for the Mormonism research, I want to finish my reread of Wrestling the Angel by Terrell Givens and reading Feeding the Flock by Terrell Givens, which is the second part of that. For some reason, the second part was not recorded as an audiobook. There's only the printed book for the second part, which is a bit of a shame because I really appreciated what Wrestling the Angel does, and I hope that Feeding the Flock, Looking More Church Organization, does also help me there. So that's when I feel I have probably mostly done more than enough to be qualified of actually recording that video. In fact, I'm going to start recording those videos parts in the next couple of days. But yeah, so that's something that I'm definitely going to read. Then also I have to, of course, start reading actual Brandon Sanderson novels, haven't I? And yes, the first one will be Elantris. It's already on my phone. Elantris is also, the audiobook for Elantris is roughly the same length as the Joseph Smith biography, just for comparison. That's what we're talking about here. So there's that. I'm going to read that at some point this week. I'll try to also read some other stuff. I mean, As soon as I have like a new Audible credit, I'll probably spend it on is it The Fury of the Gods, the third one? Yes, that final the Bloodsworn book by John Gwynne, and I'll talk about that when it is done. But that's another book that I'm definitely going to read because I've read 2 of those, and I feel bad about not completing series, so that's going to happen. Beyond that, I'm a bit at loose ends when it comes to this stuff because I feel like I'm overwhelmed. It's like I have to do all this, I have to do all the Mormonism stuff because I promised. So that's what's going to happen. But I also, don't want to get bogged down and do nothing but Mormonism and Sanderson stuff because that's going to drive me insane. I want to, read books that I know are cool. And so I'll definitely read Kirinya by Ian MacDonald at some point, hopefully very soon. I just don't know when that will be. Could be this week, could be next week. We will find out. Other stuff, when it comes up, I'll get on it. We'll see how that goes. So that's reading plans for now. If you think I've missed like an important new book that came out or whatever, let me know in the comments. I'll definitely take it into consideration. See if I can, if it's something I want to get into. We'll find out. So that's reading plans. What about videos? I hear you ask. Well, I don't. I just made it up. It's rhetorical. Anyway, what about videos? Well, I made one. I wanted to make at least 2, but, it's not always easy to getting these things worked out, and I'll definitely talk about it a bit more later. I did make a video for The Great When by Alan Moore, and it came out last night, relatively late. It's up now. Some of you have already watched it. Some of you have already commented. I really, really appreciate that. And this is probably the point where I need to mention something. For some reason, I can't comment on YouTube right now. It's on the website. When I'm trying to send comments on the website, they don't send. I don't know what's going on there. It's weird. If I comment from my phone, from the app, no problem. Comments work out. Yeah, that's something that I guess if you comment on something and I don't reply, it's probably because I have seen the comment, but I can't actually reply until I'm, on my phone or whatnot, and typing on my phone is always very, very annoying. So that's that part. What else do we? I made that video, and I had a live stream. We did the monthly live stream. My good friend Britton came on, and we talked for 4 hours, which is a lot of time, man. I had a lot of fun with it. I hope you guys had a lot of fun, like watching us. I certainly saw some lively conversations in the chat there. Otherwise, we wouldn't have talked for 4 hours, I guess. So, thanks everyone for showing up. I always really enjoy these live streams. They're really good. They mean a lot to me, and I really appreciate them. So, yeah, there's that. Let's hope there will be more stuff this week, which is obviously the next part, right? What kind of videos am I planning to make this week? And as I already said, I will very much try, to start recording the Mormonism video. This will have to be done in parts because it's too long, and as I said, I can't write scripts and I can't read scripts. That's the point. And so I have to improvise stuff, and with videos that are this sort of like information heavy, I need to sort of like pace this out and do one block at a time. I'll try start recording them this week. I don't want this to be like another 4-hour Arthurian monstrosity, but I guess it'll probably run around like 1 hour, maybe over 1 hour. We'll see. I need to figure out what to put in and what not to put in, I guess, is the point there. But I can't promise to have the whole thing done this week. That's probably too much to ask for. So I'll try to figure out something else to make at least one video this week, because I feel bad for not posting like any videos during the week. So I'll see if I can manage to record something, read another shorter book that I really wanted to talk about, see if I can come up with something of the sorts. Don't worry, it won't be tier lists, it won't be anything of the sorts. I don't get tagged in tags that much, so I don't have like any of those lying around that I could just go. I mean, obviously I could always just pick one, but I'm not good at that either, so maybe I'll try to come up with something that I find interesting and make at least one video in that regard. We'll see. That's the plans for now. Come up with videos, ideas, and if I manage to read Kirinya, then obviously the Kirinya video will come up. But as I said, I don't know exactly how to do that. After that, the Mormonism video, hopefully next week, maybe. we'll see. I do my best to get it out as quickly as possible, because I want that one up before I make a video for Elantris, and that's sort of like the next important thing that I wanted to slowly move over, is exactly how I'm doing this. And I could technically start reading Elantris right now, but I'm kind of worried that if I do so, I will sort of like bend my arguments in the Mormonism video in a way that makes it easier to then sort of dock onto those arguments, pick them up, and further the kind of argument or thesis that I will develop for talking about when I'm talking about Elantris. And that feels a bit like cheating to me. Technically, I don't think it is. I mean, if I would write this as a book, I would obviously read, do the whole thing, read all the books, and then write the whole thing, and obviously try to make it round, sort of like make all these arguments coherent, and obviously bend the introduction of Mormonism and so forth in a way that does allow me to sort of dock onto that. That's certainly how I would do this if I would write a book. But since the goal here is videos, and videos are, you play with authenticity here, right? The idea is not to do that, and the idea is more like go into these books individually without much of a predisposition. Of course, I have read Mistborn Era 1 and Alloy of Law before, so I do have some preconceptions there, but I hope I can articulate where my problem there lies. Like, I don't want to sort of like leave out or feel like I may have left out parts of Mormonism, like in my introduction to Mormonism for fantasy fans, that I leave out stuff or emphasize bits and pieces that allow me to then make a thesis about Brandon Sanderson that may be very critical. I suspect it will be rather critical in some regards, and that's sort of like trying to avoid people blame, calling me out for leaving out stuff and so forth, being biased and so forth, because I try not to be biased. I mean, obviously I am biased in a lot of ways, but I try to be fair while being biased, because of course I am, as everyone is. And that's something that is interesting for me, because I'm making YouTube videos, and probably no one will actually watch them, or very few people will watch them unless someone goes and posts them in like a Brandon Sanderson subreddit or whatever, right? So I'm making these videos for like a very small audience, indeed. So why am I like taking this much care? Why am I trying to sort of, in my brain, sort of creating these adversaries that are basically academic level sort of like critics in a lot of ways? Why am I doing this? Like, I don't necessarily know. I think in part it's just insecurity. Wanting to make sure that like any possible criticism is already dealt with in before I actually start, which is definitely like a danger that you fall into when you work at, do stuff at university, and you can do the same thing there, and then it leads to writer's block and all kinds of terrible things, and you never produce an actual thing, which is definitely where something that I've always struggled with, and I'm certainly struggling with it with these videos, which is why they take so long in a lot of ways. So I have to kind of figure out how that works. And I don't know, talking about Mormonism feels like something that may annoy some people, that may actually have a different reach than my usual stuff when I talk about, an Ian MacDonald novel and 30 people watch the video, which is really depressing when you look at like how many subscribers I have. Like the actual view numbers are incredibly low at the moment. And it's certainly something that has always also stuck with me. And I'm certainly struggling with the fact that right now, compared to like earlier stuff I did, the stuff I'm currently doing is not doing well numbers wise. And numbers aren't everything. I know that. And I'm certainly very much convinced of what I'm doing right now, like on a moral level and so forth, motivational level. I'm very much convinced that I'm doing the right thing at the moment with, talking about books like Ian MacDonald's and so forth. But it's difficult to always see those metrics and not sometimes go like, well, I could just make like a drama video and it would probably give me like 100 and 150, 200, whatever views, or even more. There is a temptation there to do those kind of things. And I'm always struggling with not doing that, because integrity, I guess, is something that is important to me in that regard. And I don't know how to deal with that. It's just very something I'm struggling with in a lot of ways, and I don't know what to do about it. It's like interesting, which is slowly where I want to move this to. I said there's questions and stuff, important stuff. See, I've been sort of invited by YouTube to join their channel membership bootcamp, which is something they run for creators, smaller channels at the moment, in my case, to explain how to use the YouTube channel memberships, how to do them, how to make them work, and so forth. And it's workshops, and I'm just interested in it, so I'm taking part in that. And it's really difficult for me I'm really struggling with it, because it's well done. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's incredibly well done, but it's clearly about marketing. It's about marketing a channel, about maximizing numbers, about maximizing channel members, because that will give you more money. And obviously, it's very much that. It uses marketing language. It uses all of these things, and there's several layers here, because BookTube has never sort of like the larger BookTube sphere feels very anti-commercial in a lot of ways. Yes, people, do all their consumerism, and we then talk about it. But like most booktubers don't present as professionally as other parts of YouTube do. We rarely talk about revenue. We don't talk about these kind of things, and it almost feels like a dirty thing to actively sort of like market and change content to maximize not viewer numbers, but like actual earnings, and maximize people joining your channel, joining your Patreon. We try not to do that, and there's larger conversations to be had about why we don't do that, but it's certainly the larger sphere. And even within that sphere, right, I talk about like a lot of like leftist stuff and building up like channel memberships in a way that makes it as tempting as possible for people to give me money, feels manipulative in a lot of ways. But that's how marketing works, and that's how YouTube as a platform wants creators to work, because obviously if you organize these memberships, YouTube takes a cut. So they have like interests in this working out as much as possible. And yeah, it's an interesting experience. It's certainly not an easy one. I have not decided whether I will actually do channel memberships or not. There's, all kinds of like logistic elements to that. The first part is you get like badges and emojis and stuff, which means I would have to find someone to actually create these kind of graphics for me, and even if no one actually ever buys them, I still would have to do this stuff up front. And then there's, ideas like, channel, like membership exclusive stuff, like early access to videos, the same things that Patreon offers, basically. Exclusive behind the scenes videos that only members get, and live streams only for members. And that's stuff that I don't want to do, because at the end of the day, I don't want anything behind a paywall, because I mean, if you guys want to give me money, that's always great, right? I'll not say no, but I don't want people feeling like they're missing out because they can't afford a membership or whatever. I don't like that idea, because being poor sucks. I know that. And being sort of like left out is something that really, really annoys me. And that's certainly something that I'm struggling with the whole idea of memberships, with the same thing with Patreon, basically, which, yeah, I need to figure this out. So yeah, I mean, if you have comments on that whole idea, let me know in the comments. I would really, really appreciate like your insight there, because maybe I'm just too insecure about this. Maybe I'm just overly sensitive there, because that's certainly something I've learned from this. Like, I am doing BookTube very much not like YouTubers, professional YouTubers or whatever, are seeing their content creation. I'm very much not doing that. And it's interesting to see people talk about that, other people that are also like smaller YouTubers and so forth, and see how people think about these kind of things. So I'm certainly learning a lot there in that regard. I'm just lost, I guess, in that regard, in the larger sort of like idea of like what to do here, because yeah, once you're over that magic like 1,000 subscribers, 400 view hours, you get your channel monetized sort of like thing. YouTube treats you differently, because you're now making money for YouTube, which gives them an incentive to force you, or at least tempt you into making more money. And yeah, I don't know what to do about that, I guess. But then, as I said, like my channel is not exactly performing in the way that YouTube expects channels to perform. Like, the growth is incredibly slow, and even for the growth that we're currently having, the view numbers are very different from that, and I don't know what to do about that. I mean, all I can do is basically do the things that feel right for me, and that's what I'm doing, and then hoping that some of you appreciate that, which is what I'm doing at the moment. So, that's that. I don't know, maybe it's just also like the autumn thing of like trying to figure out what to do next, it always feels like the end of like, I don't know, am I the only person who feels like autumn feels more like the end of the year than actual like New Year's? At least it does for me. It's like, it feels more like the end of like, of the year as this like cycle in a lot of ways. I feel autumn feels much more like that with, you know, Thanksgiving or whatever you have. And obviously there's reasons why in like, more like agrarian cultures and so forth, that is when the end of the year was sort of celebrated in a lot of ways. I guess some of that has some impact on me as well, because it just feels natural in a lot of ways. Like autumn is sort of like the end of a lot of things, and I guess that makes me more reflective or more prone to feeling bad for myself. Maybe that's part of it. Also, obviously, less sun, and we all know how that works. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm currently at. I am certainly struggling with, you know, all kinds of like mental health stuff at the moment, some general disability stuff. I feel, and it's one of those things like where my eyesight obviously is mostly gone, but I do still see like light and dark, and sometimes there's like these situations like where something that I still could see suddenly, that I haven't, you know, looked out for a while, has suddenly doesn't work anymore, and you only notice that like when, like if you have like discrete periods between, because it's so gradual in a lot of ways, and one of those moments was just yesterday, and it kind of shook me, because like while I'm obviously officially blind and so forth, there's still apparently ways of being more blind, and that kind of sucks, and it's certainly something that I need to get over with again as well, and I don't know what to do about that kind of stuff, because there's nothing I can do, is there? So I just need to, I guess, figure out what to do next. So the next part will be Mormonism. Let me know what you think about all the stuff that I just rambled, especially the channel membership stuff. If you have ideas of videos that you really want to see from me while I'm struggling with figuring out how to do the Mormonism shit, let me know. I'm certainly open for all kinds of ideas. Just don't ask for lists. I don't do lists. I mean, I did one this year. That's enough. But anyway, thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for showing up for the live stream. Thanks for watching videos, commenting, and so forth. I really appreciate it. I'll try to answer to your comments and reply to your comments. I hope I can do this on my browser again very soon. Technology kind of sucks, I guess. Anyway, thanks for all of that. Like, subscribe, share, do all the good things. I'll see you very soon, or you'll see me very soon with something. And until then, thanks and cheers.